We don't want to be caught praising our guest or anything.
Sounds good. We need to keep ourselves humble somehow.
Right. Oh, yeah.
As if being a poet is not enough.
Rhyme or free, it doesn't matter to me. It's my bad poetry. Good day and welcome to My Bad Poetry, a podcast where we take a deep dive into our poems from youth, yesteryear, or even yesterday, always asking the question, why in the world did I write this? I'm Aaron.
And I'm Dave.
And today we have with us a lover of camping and doctor in biomedical science, the author of Focal Point, podcaster with Bone Lab, freelance writer featured in countless publications, including the New York Times, and was suggested to us as a future guest after my spouse Abby heard them on The Nocturnist. Jenny Chi, welcome to My Bad Poetry.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me, Aaron and Dave.
Yeah, thanks for slumming it with us.
Not at all.
You've even been on better podcasts than us. I'll admit I haven't listened to Bone Labs, but it's probably a better podcast than ours.
No, it was 10 episodes. It isn't running anymore.
Oh, no. Okay. What was it about?
It was Radiolab inspired
Sure.
stories about bones, because I had started that podcast with some friends from grad school at UCSF at the time, and they were all bone researchers. And I was the weird cancer researcher, but I was but I just want to be involved in a podcast. And I
Sure.
had done journalism on the school newspaper and things like that. So I brought the writing and editing chops to that group.
Very cool.
Nice.
How'd you get connected with The Nocturnist? That's my wife's favorite show.
I think I had known about it at UCSF because Emily is a physician at UCSF, I believe. And then after I graduated, my first job was at Doximity, which is this company that is basically LinkedIn for healthcare providers.
Oh.
And so I was on the editorial team there, and I had started a couple of columns blog, including a medical humanities one and a podcast feature. So I think I reached out to Emily for both of those.
Ah.
So yes, that's how. A lot of weird connections.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the right way to do podcasting, though.
just
Everything needs to be a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate strange. I appreciate this podcast.
You're on the right show.
I am perfectly normal. Aaron brings the strange.
Dave, what is behind you? I always mean to ask. You're at the in-laws. It looks like a big nest, like a bird's nest.
I was wondering too.
Let's see. I would say about 3,000 different wreaths. Literally
Wreaths?
stretching from here to here.
Oh, decorative?
Yeah, I'm in my mother-in-law's crafting room.
Ah, lovely. A good room.
As opposed to where I normally record, which is my crafting room. So
What kinds of crafts?
what my mother-in-law does, she has everything. She's just such a talented person. I do a little bit of fabric stuff, so some sewing and yeah.
He's being modest. He's also a phenomenal woodworker. He does
Ooh.
stuff in his garage.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
super cool.
phenomenal is a lie.
You make stuff for the local Montessori school, Dave. You're pretty
I
cool.
do.
That's really cool.
It's pretty fun.
So, Jenny, what else have you been up to we might not have covered in this very brief intro of ours?
Well, on the topic of crafts, I also dabble in a lot of arts and crafts, which is why my ears perked up when you said that, and I was curious about it. I have not gotten into woodworking. That's the next frontier of crafts for me.
It's awesome. It's like crafting, but with danger. Crafting, but with fear of losing a finger or two.
I don't know if you're selling it here, Dave.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
That'd be the opposite of selling me on it. No, but I still kind of want to get into it.
Yeah, Jenny, you might have friends who would gladly sew that finger back on. I feel like you run in the right circles.
That's true.
Maybe. Probably do know someone who knows someone who could help out with that.
Now, you've done a lot of writing as kind of translating the medical world into like the humanities, like you said. Is that something that you're kind of doing full time now, or?
I wouldn't say I necessarily do that full time. So now I'm a full-time freelance writer, and so I work independently. I guess I do a little bit of everything, and this is why I wanted to go freelance because prior to this, I always had like, my full-time day job type thing, whether it was like grad school or like an actual job that was very like science heavy, very technical, to some extent, to varying extents, I guess. And then I was trying to balance that with like the creative writing that I wanted to do, which sometimes touched on those topics, but wasn't really super related to my day job most of the time. It was a lot. I don't know how people do it. I don't know how like parents who like also have day jobs do it, because then you have like 3 jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like 2 is bad enough.
Right.
Just not a lot of sleep. I think that's the secret. Well, let's get into the realm of bad poetry, which is why we have brought you here. To bring us into this realm, Dave, you have written a hastily written poem for the week. What do you have for us today?
This actually goes back to some of our crafting conversation. This is a poem called Daily Quest. Guessing the gauge of gargantuan gross, an area of anathema and adiaphora, running round ragged wraps of refuse, another arena to attest to my apathetic arranging. God, a guardian guide, grant my golden goal. Everything evasively eludes if excavation.
Thank you. I appreciate the commitment to alliteration.
Right?
I do too. There are some big words you had to stumble over there to get it.
What are you talking about? I will say, while writing this poem, I was typing it into my phone on a Google Doc, and with swipe text, it recognized the word adiaphora, and I thought, oh, that's not a good sign for, like, who I am.
Wow, that's impressive.
But Dave, I have to ask, what was this about?
Garage. It's
Oh,
my garage.
Fascinating.
I didn't even catch that.
That's why it's back to the crafting, because it's all about trying to find any stinking tool that I own and digging through piles of sawdust and my children's toys and everything else that I have just randomly thrown into the garage, because I'm like, I'll keep it for later. No, I won't.
No.
It's just trash.
It's
Yeah.
relatable.
That is relatable.
Yeah.
It could come in handy someday.
You could.
You never
It
know.
never does. That's the thing. You have no idea how many pieces of wood I have in my garage where I'm like, okay, if one day I need a 2x4 glued to a 2x6 in a T shape with I'm never going to need it.
But you might.
It'll make great firewood one day.
Hey,
That is a use.
that is a use. See? Point proven.
You guys are both mean.
I'm just trying to justify my own hoarding of scraps.
I get ya.
Oh, wow. So, Dave, you gave us an alliterative acrostic. Phenomenal work. Now, Jenny, you have given us poems in chronological order, which I just love. I'm automatically geeking out about this because we can now see the growth of a writer from middle school to just
Early
after
college.
Just after college. Yeah. We get 3 like vignettes, 3 scenes of a story that is your life in bad poetry.
Know if I want to know that story.
Well, you're going to share it with us now.
Just this being an audio medium, I would like our listeners to know that the entire time Aaron was talking, Jenny was laughing behind her hand because she did not like what Aaron was saying. I just want to say it.
Oh, wow. So how this works is we dive in, you read the first one, without any context, without any defense ahead of time. Read it through, and then we'll pick it apart.
Shall I start? Right, this first one is titled The Seaman's Stray. From childhood's hour, I was torn away, mewing in protest, hissing with rage. I was taken, crying, to a cruel new home, abandoned by day, and at night, still alone. They demanded that I work and kill mice, chased by barking fiends, sleeping on ice. They ran after me with wooden sticks, beating and kicking, eluding my tricks. While my brother lay in the captain's window, lazily, hazily, as if he didn't know I was out there, alone and so cold, dreaming of the day when I was cruelly sold. The miniature monsters mercilessly threw me to my most dreaded foe, the raging, unforgiving sea. Mewing in protest, hissing with rage, I reached up and clawed at his face. With one last desperate swipe, I clawed at the air, clinging to life. Alas, my efforts were all in vain, as my world grew dark, and gone was the pain. Goodbye, cruel world, until we meet again. Perhaps next time I'll not be the stray, and I will lay idly in the window by day. Okay, I tried so hard to keep it together through this reading.
Well
did a great
done.
job.
Well done. Oh boy. Okay, why did you kill the cat at the end of this poem?
Yes, apparently.
Oh my goodness.
That's a cat thrown into the sea.
Yeah. What was going on in this middle school mind of yours?
A lot of angst, so much angst.
Sure.
Oh boy, was this for a school assignment?
No.
Oh
I
my-
actually, there were others that I could have chosen that were for the school assignment,
Okay.
but this was too funny. Actually, I think the school assignment might have been later. It was in high school.
So you wrote this horrific story of a cat just for fun? Just imagining this poor cat suffering on a ship?
It feels important to say that I was personifying this cat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. That's really all I had to say about that. It wasn't just that I invented this cat and like I was watching this cat being grown. I was the cat.
Right. So, but the important question is, did you grow up with cats?
No.
Oh. Okay.
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 I wish I could tell you the context for this because I too am curious.
You know what they say about curiosity, though?
That it's great for cats.
The best for cats.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. Okay. So you're personifying a fictitious cat when you yourself did not own cats. After the first stanza, I wondered if it was about moving to a new place because the mention of new home. Did you move in middle school?
Not in middle school. I moved a lot when I was a kid. I moved like every year of elementary school.
Oh, wow.
And then when I reached middle school, that was when my parents finally like settled into one place.
Sure.
I did skip a grade in middle school. I, like went from
Sorry. Bad cough here.
It's okay. I like to say I'm a nerd in the classical sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did skip over 8th grade.
Ah.
This was around when I wrote this. So, you have a point there.
Yeah, all that turmoil, all that changing over.
Ripped from childhood's hour. Yeah.
Yes. Thrown into the icy coldness of
Of high school?
High school?
yeah. Yeah.
That actually totally tracks.
Yeah, actually.
understand. Yeah.
I'm gonna say, aside from the questionable content,
Again, Aaron, she is our guest. I am sorry, Jenny.
I'm actually very impressed that this came from the mind of like junior high, early high school. Like, I mean, again, you might not have heard the poems I was writing in high school. It was not this. This is a masterclass in like decent middle school poetry. It has some nice rhymes. Yeah. Nice stanzas.
It really sounded like you were going to keep going with
I
compliments.
kind of ran out.
Right there.
I kind of ran out there.
I don't know about nice. It has rhymes.
Yeah,
It has rhymes.
You
Yeah.
had some consistent rhyming, and then other times where like it just kind of. It's like you were dabbling with rhyming. It's like, this is a fun rhyme, and then at other times you're like, yeah, this doesn't need a rhyme.
Yeah, that's probably accurate. I didn't actually like analyze this when I found it to like see if there's any real rhyme scheme. Just that I was really into trying to rhyme things in middle school.
But like you have like monsters, me, foe, C. So you got the me and C, and then protest, rage, up, face. Kind of a near rhyme to rage. Last, swipe, air, life. None of the rest of those in that stanza really rhyme. But you get these other moments where it's like, again, time stray, idly, day. Yeah, very consistently inconsistent.
Okay.
I think that's just called inconsistent. Aaron.
that's
that's
right.
how words work.
I have to say the part that I really cringed at, and I think I might have started laughing here, was like lazily and hazily.
Yeah.
That line. I was like, what does that mean? What was I thinking? I mean, I can't be too mean to like my 11-year-old self, I guess.
Right.
I'll cut her some slack.
I imagine a cat laying back, and again, it's kind of anthropomorphized, but like with like a IPA hazy.
That would have made his life much better. Or her life, I guess, if I was the cat.
I was thinking more, what is it, the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah.
The hookah smoking caterpillar?
Oh, you.
It's been a while. So I do have a deeply personal and philosophical question that I need to ask.
Okay.
Mewing versus meowing? That's the end of that question?
As in, like, the difference between them? Or
I don't know.
why I went with one over the other?
And repeated it. It was it's a repeated phrase. Mewing in protest, hissing in rage. It's the only line that comes back towards the end.
Interesting choice of repetition.
Yes.
Like 11-year-old Jenny.
Yeah. I'm gonna throw my hat in for meowing. I'm just saying. But I think it's because what is it? The Gen Z, Gen Alpha. What is that thing when they do?
Yeah,
is it
mewing.
mewing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's ruined that for me.
I gotta work on my jawline, Aaron.
For those who don't know, mewing is a thing like where you like swallow with your mouth closed. It's supposed to make the face muscles more defined. I'm not sure, but
If you are coming to this podcast to learn what mewing is, you've already lost.
you are in the wrong place. But this cat is going to have an impressive jawline. Okay, I also have to say, yeah, this
Just
is
gorgeous.
This is amazing.
Product of preteen angst.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're imagining this cat reincarnated? Is this the whole like 9 lives kind of thing playing out?
Oh, well, current me would like to imagine that.
Sure.
I don't think 11-year-old me was thinking in that direction.
Yeah, it's just that next time.
Although, I guess you're right.
Perhaps
you're right.
next time I'll not be stray and I'll lay idly. It does seem to have a little string of hope that like this cat's coming back.
You're right.
As he or she sinks to the murky depths.
Well, yeah, we can ignore that part. We'll just focus on the 9 lives part, Dave. There's hope here.
Death is inevitable, Aaron. That's what poetry is always about.
Oh.
Well, kind of is. In a way. You could interpret all poetry to be about death in some way, shape, or form. Like fear of
Seems
death,
like a real
trying
healthy attitude.
Hey.
I instill this angsty preteen clearly.
The emo never leaves. It's just
No.
it comes out differently. This poor cat. You've really brought us a downer here.
Yeah, I don't think there were any that weren't a downer, to be honest. I went for most entertaining from that period.
You mean Minotaur isn't going to be the most uplifting thing you've ever read? I have high hopes for this one.
If I know anything about the Minotaur myth, it's filled with hope and definitely not human sacrifice. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, before we get lost in this maze of Minotaur, is there anything else you want to...
Sorry. Entirely, I couldn't control it.
I haven't had a good segue in a while. I needed to get that in there.
Well, you said maze rather than labyrinth, Aaron.
Oh, shoot. You're
It's
right.
not a maze, it's a labyrinth.
I'll have to cut it. That was embarrassing.
The classicists will be pissed.
Are you also a nerd in the classical sense, Dave?
Oh,
No.
oh, Dave.
I was a religion major in college with a minor in classical languages and music, so I was very cool.
Yeah. You still read Koine Greek for fun, don't you?
I wouldn't say for fun, but for enjoyment.
Okay. Well, let's parse those two words.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jenny, if there's no other context that has been brought to light for this this Seaman stray, I would suggest we move on to Minotaur.
That sounds good.
Okay.
I'm afraid I can't think of any other context from that far back.
Well, we'll just have to follow that string and see where it leads to.
That was
Because the
good.
Minotaur...
Yeah,
I got you.
yeah, that was
Got
good.
you.
That was good.
Dear listeners, again, audio medium, both Jenny and Aaron are looking at me with pure and utter contempt.
This is not contempt.
No, Dave. You gotta-
Disdain, hatred,
is-
malevolence.
Yeah. No, this is Dave's self-doubt coming out.
Pity. It was pity.
That's pity.
I get it.
Like, if you had sent me that as a meme, I would have hearted it.
Aww.
So now, Minotaur. Composing myself. I swung from monkey bar to flee the dreaded Minotaur. As a child, I feared his beastly half, perversion of a suckling calf. I thought the thirst for milk replaced by that for blood of the young and chaste. I should have feared the human feet that propel the beast down the street. For man, not bull, took youth to war, when once it knew perhaps no more than a calf of being hated. Suddenly, we can't be sated. 10 years reduced the Minotaur to a forgotten myth, too far from ancient Greece to rouse much fear. But when I heard the hearty cheer for stamping out a foreign foe, I felt the bull's last fatal blow in defense of his hollow home, from innocents who might dare roam the narrow corridors too long. Perhaps he would have done no wrong without man's hate. The young then learn to shield themselves with hate in turn.
Okay.
Might have heard the pauses where I cringed a few times.
Oh, yeah. Now, this brings to mind the question for everyone's summer, or was it spring? The bear or man?
Oh, yeah.
You were just ahead of your time.
Really, my perspective in this poem was vindicated by that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So moving on, next poem.
My favorite, I'm not going to declare a favorite part yet. But just from the very beginning, you are putting or at least this fictitious self, the I of this poem, you're throwing yourself in there, but it's the playground? Like you say, yes. I swung from monkey bar to bar. Why evoke a playground imagery and then never bring it back?
Because an excellent question.
Well, because like halfway through the poem, you say 10 years later, so you're not on the playground anymore. Aaron struggles with reading comprehension. He's not as clever as I am.
It's there. Yeah. Okay. No, it doesn't say 10 years later. It says 10 years reduced the Minotaur. Okay, so
Fine.
you set yourself as a child and you thought as a child. And now you are in early college and you now know the beast for what it is. Man. Is
Yes.
that okay, good. Following this.
I need you to take that one back, Aaron, because I need you to do a better read because you need to lean a little more to see the beast for what it truly is. Man.
That was good. That was good.
Wow. Okay. So you said you wrote this in college, early
Yeah.
college.
I think I was 17.
Okay.
I think I was a sophomore. I know this because I wrote this for a class assignment.
Ooh.
I both want to name my teacher and I don't because I don't want to embarrass him
Sure.
because I turned this in. He was very nice to me. Thank you, Mark, for humoring me.
There you go.
There you
That's all I'll
go.
go with. I don't actually remember the feedback on this particular poem. I can't imagine it was that good. I know like Mark was really into. I'll just name him. He cannot
That's
be
okay.
blamed for my bad
No.
poetry.
Yes.
No. Yeah, so Mark Jarman was my professor at Vanderbilt. I was a sophomore, I think. And this was the advanced creative writing or poetry seminar or whatever.
Cool.
He had us write in a different form every week. So
Okay.
I think by college, I was mostly, I was halfway done with rhyming actually. But for this form, I think we were doing rhyming couplets. And so
Oh.
that is part of why this still rhymes so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these rhymes are really cringy as I read through this. What else? What other context should I give? Oh, I was really into like Greek mythology in general. This was not like the only one. Like I wrote poems from the perspective of like every major like character from the Odyssey, probably.
Nice.
Okay, we're going to need to have you back because we will need those poems.
We need the Odyssey.
We will need them.
We need the Odyssey poems. Yeah.
Some of them actually ended up in my book.
There you go.
Oh, I'm gonna have to read through this again. So you are clearly playing with style here, in that you have the rhyming couplets, but you go 2-4, 2-4, 2-4 throughout the whole thing, as far as your structure. So my question is, you seem to be, at least in Focal Point, very experimental with your structure. You do some couplet poems, but you also play with the formats a lot. Is there a favorite style that you have? Or that one when you look back on and you're like, oh, writing in that way was super cringe?
Oh, I don't know that I really have a favorite form consistently.
Okay.
Like right now, I've been writing a lot of prose poems,
Sure.
and I've found that just not trying to think about line breaks while I'm writing has helped me make more associative leaps.
Ooh.
Because I
That's
think
cool.
in the past, I think there have been times when I've like decided on a form in the beginning. This is probably a good example of that. And then the form becomes limiting. And I think sometimes that can be a good thing. I used to much more consistently, like in the month of April for National Poetry Month, I would do like a daily syllabic. So I would just like very arbitrarily like pick either like an existing syllabic form, or I would just like choose arbitrarily like a number of syllables to end each line on
Cool.
to like give myself some forced constraints. And sometimes that can be like really creatively productive. I know Victoria Chang has talked about this also,
Okay.
but she's a much better poet than I am. So I'm sure that that the creative constraints are more productive for her. I think when I was starting to write poetry when I was much younger, they just became actual constraints sometimes. Like some
Sure.
of these bad rhymes.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, some of these are very bad rhymes. And it is almost definitely because I had picked the form, like roughly picked the line length, and then I had to do something to like stick with it, and I wasn't good enough to figure out what to do there.
Yeah. Yeah, I you can see where some of these lines are broken in weird ways. That last stanza when you read it aloud, it didn't hit right.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I think that is a good example of that. And I think another thing I sort of noticed in this poem, I wasn't very skilled at enjambments or just like line breaks other than for the sake of the rhyme, I guess.
Hmm.
Mm.
I think what came more naturally to me then was like ending a line roughly at the end of a clause or sentence.
Sure.
And I think, yeah, I wrote very like narratively.
Yeah. But with that sense of ending with this end of a line or sentence, it almost comes off more choppy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the few times when I don't do that, then it doesn't feel intentional and it doesn't flow very well. Like I stumbled a few times reading when I didn't end where I thought I was going to end.
Yeah. Right in the middle. It's now that you point it out, there's so many times where it's very clear, like you've gone to the end of your phrase, you've kind of completed a thought, but then the center couplet here, you have 10 years reduced the Minotaur to a forgotten myth too far. Not only is there an enjambment, you go to a whole new stanza and you capitalize the next word, and yet it's all the same sentence.
See, but I actually kind of liked that because you were also still struggling to hold back a laugh from hated and sated.
Yes. Oh my
And so
gosh.
you read through it without the pause of, to a forgotten myth too far from ancient Greece. It was to a forgotten myth too far from ancient Greece, and it felt a little more natural to me. And I was hoping that it would continue like that, but instead it was a little more ba da 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 da.
Yeah. Alas, sorry to have disappointed you.
Yeah, alack and alas.
I'm also honestly very confused by like why I did this like 2 4 2 4
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
pattern. It doesn't actually make sense.
It looks cool.
I think that was it. That was probably it. Like, because also that like third to last stanza, it doesn't end there. It flows into the next two line, the next couplet. I'm like,
Yes.
what? Why did I do this? I
And
legitimately,
then
yeah.
that couplet rose into the. I mean, yeah, the breaks seem very arbitrary.
Hmm.
The full line,
Yeah.
I felt the bull's last fatal blow in defense of his hollow home from innocents who might dare roam the narrow corridors too long. Well, is it? Is the bull's last blow in defense of his home? Because, well, now I'm confused at who's hitting who in this.
It kind of loses the direction of it.
That is an excellent question.
Because you feel the bull's last fatal blow, but it's in his defense of his home. But I thought the Minotaur is reduced. Okay, Jenny, you gotta explain this.
I'll try my best. What was I trying to say here? This is the trouble with fine poems that are too old. Okay, so that sentence starts, but when I heard the hearty cheer, all right.
Mm-hmm.
So the cheer evoked the sense of the bull's last fatal blow, but that doesn't make sense if it's the bull like making the blow versus receiving the blow.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's the bull receiving the blow, but it just is worded weirdly and doesn't actually make sense.
So like the bull is being defeated as the bull is defending his home.
I think that's what I was getting
Okay.
at.
So it's sympathy for the Minotaur, You're basically saying
Yeah.
it's these warriors who are going into the labyrinth who are causing the bull to be violent.
Yes. I think this is a justice for the Minotaur type poem, like justice for Frankenstein's monster kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and that's what I was seeing in the earlier. The I should have feared the human feet.
Yeah, right.
It's not the Minotaur's fault. The bull isn't a violent animal. It's the human side of the Minotaur that, like, it.
It's still his
I was,
feet.
yeah. I think I was trying to make it like a metaphor of like humanity destroying the environment or violence against creation and the world itself. But maybe it's just a minotaur, man.
I think I was also trying to do that, just not
Okay.
well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could claim that, Jenny.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Jenny, before we go down that rabbit hole, we should probably
Again,
get.
it's a labyrinth, Aaron, not a rabbit hole. It's a minotaur cave. Don't worry, we're almost there.
Yeah. Oh. We're almost at almost. We should probably move on to your last poem for us today, which is titled Almost.
Composing myself once more. Almost. Do you remember the island of La Tortuga and the heron without her nest? Remember how she shrieked always at the same jagged tomb, beat weary wings until the black crags bled feathers. Sometimes I could see the nest, the hungry young heron reach for feathered fish, resurrected by her lovely morning. I am like that now, beating fists ragged at what almost was.
I feel like I'm missing
Everything?
everything.
Yeah. I don't even. Oh, yeah. We're going to need some context, Jenny.
So this was written shortly after college. I think when I was younger, like basically middle school through college, I avoided writing about myself by writing these persona poems. And then, like a little bit after college, I think I'd started inserting myself into poems more, but I was still hiding. And so I think there was like a period where there were a lot of these like very short poems with some sort of image. And then I relate to this image in some way. And I just say that in the poem. But there's no way for anyone to understand how I am relating to this image.
Yes.
Because I'm still like hiding myself.
Yeah, it feels more like a journal entry than it does like a poem for
Yes.
the populace.
Yeah.
Which I guess is fine. Poems can be that.
Yeah, poems can be just for you. But without the context, that last stanza, I am like that now. It's like, great. Okay, you've just thrown a wrench or a mystery into this poem
At the very end.
that is not resolved in any way. And maybe, hey, maybe that's the effect one could go for with an almost poem. That almost getting it type feeling.
Yeah, I suppose that is one way to interpret the title.
My a feathered fish is not an image I was thinking I would hear today. How is a fish feathered?
I too am confused by this. I think what I intended there was just that like the feathers that had fallen off of the mother heron like had gotten onto the fish.
Like into the water or onto already caught fish?
The feathered fish in her
Maybe?
nest, like the downy feathers of a
Or
chick.
that? Yes, maybe.
There used to be a cryptid species in northern Canada of a fish that looked like it had grown hair. And it turned out it was a fungus that would grow on these lake trout. And so they'd pull them up from the water and it looked like they were covered in fur. But there
Oh,
was this story of these mammal fish hybrid, blah, 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 blah. And that's the image I got right away. And it really grossed me out because that's the
it's really
grossest
gross.
image. It's really gross.
Really gross.
Maybe that's why the heron is shrieking. She's pulled out this furry fungus fish and is like
Oh gosh.
trying to feed it to her young, and like that's not gonna go well.
No. Maybe that's why there's no nest anymore.
Yeah, the birds died from the fungus.
Oh, I need to erase this image from my head right now.
No, what you need to do is Google it because it will mess you up.
No, I don't want to see that either. But you did introduce the image feathered fish, so I'm gonna blame you, Jenny.
That's okay. That's okay.
This feels like you've come out of college and you're breaking with like the rhyming.
Mhm.
Why La Tortuga?
I think this like first image is because I had just been there.
Okay.
And I think that was like an actual part of this was real. So like I think I really did see a heron that was just like in front of these like empty rocks. And then I concocted a whole story for the heron in my head about why it was doing that. I think in my head, I became convinced that the heron had like, I don't know, like the nest had like been washed away or something. And in the background of like a lot of these sort of impersonal, weird like poems, like I should also add that my mom died, not to like make things serious.
Sure.
Like this is still a humor podcast.
What?
I have laughed a lot, therefore it is humor.
Okay.
Anyway, so my mom had died like at the very end of college, and so like a lot of my college poems, I didn't actually write a single thing about that experience during college. It's to the point that like I think just a few years ago, like a little bit before my book came out, I had emailed my former professor, Mark Jarman, and I was like, I don't know if you're going to remember me, but wanted to let you know you had like a huge impact on me. And I kept writing poems and hopefully they got less bad. And and like, and I had like mentioned the thing about my mom and he's like, oh, that's so sad. Like, I can't imagine how I would have forgotten that. I was like, oh, you definitely didn't forget. I just never told you. I didn't tell anyone. Like, it was just this very secret thing that I didn't write about, but like would sometimes like allude to. And like sometimes like after that, like in this almost poem, I almost definitely was thinking of my mom in some way and of that loss, and then like sort of projecting like loss onto this heron.
Sure.
So sometimes I think something that a lot of young poets maybe have to work through is like how to not like hide from the scary things when they're writing.
So I really appreciate that because it is a difference in how I write my crappy poetry because I don't try to write anything good because that is not my skill set. It's interesting because Aaron's middle school and high school poetry was very direct on some of those things.
Too direct. Too direct.
Too direct, where he did not hide a single thing about how he thought about himself and the world.
Yeah.
And his more recent poetry is actually like good, but don't let him hear that I said that he writes good poetry. It's just interesting to see people coming at this from a different perspective of being afraid to show themselves versus realizing that maybe you can hide yourself a little bit. Aaron.
Yeah, I do think there is a bit of a balance in poetry. Because if you just give people like the raw, unfiltered emotion, sometimes that can be equally cringe.
That's fair. And it's like, how is it different from like a journal entry?
Right. Right. But the way that you describe this poem, it's so masked. There's very little that a reader could draw from this of the emotion that you are alluding to or putting into this, that you're putting on the heron. It's of this lost nest, this lost experience, the almost and what could be type.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Huh.
like, I kind of feel like if you were to try to interpret anything from this, like from that last stanza, it was like, this sounds like I'm writing about a miscarriage,
Oh.
which I totally wasn't. Like, to be
Yeah.
clear.
But it's a nest and the young heron is lost.
Right.
Yeah. It's very much like a parent losing a child
Yeah.
or miscarriage. That could work.
But definitely not what I was
But
doing.
definitely not what you
Right,
were
yeah.
doing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if you take the author's intent out of the reading of this poem. But yeah, you just ignore author's intent entirely and there's something there.
Aaron, I would like to remind you that we are hoping to get Jenny back on the show after this time. Just throwing that out there, bud.
I make fun of myself a lot too. So to the point that like when I was like going through edits for like a recent essay, the editor would sometimes comment, "You don't have to call yourself out like that."
Oh. That's all we do on this show. We pull people on to call themselves out. So
Love it. It's kind of like Mortified. Are you guys familiar with that one? But for poetry.
yes. I'm honored that we could compare it to such a show. Oh, cool. You have taken us on quite a journey. From a personified cat to a personified heron and to a half man beast. We've been to a lot.
To man, bear, pig, right in the middle.
Yeah, we've been through a lot of creatures on this. This has been a creature feature.
You're right.
And
Intentional.
no, own it. You brought us intentionally from cat to bull to heron to show us all different sides of humanity. All these beautiful experiences.
Trailing off was a correct call there, bud.
Yep. And yeah, we come here to the end of our show, and we here at My Bad Poetry, we do end each week with the words of a true poet. And so, would you be willing to read for us another one of your poems? One, in fact, that you are proud of.
Yes, I would be happy to.
While you're finding one, shout out to Focal Point. Incredible book, Steel Toe Books. Really a moving collection. There's also there was a surreal moment. You wrote about like a flight tracker, and I was reading this book on a plane. It was kind of a fun moment for me. But anyway,
I write a lot on planes, so that kind of sense.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm gonna read a poem that's not actually from Focal Point, but thank you for the kind words on it. This is, I think I wrote this last year or another year ago. What are these last years? What is
Yeah.
time anymore?
It's all 2020,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
It's just
I know.
everything is
It's
2020.
just like 2020 part 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometime in the last couple of years. This is on the anniversary of death. It's after W.S. Merwin and Gabrielle Calver-Caressy. I have a version of this poem for every year, all unfinished, but can anything ever be finished? This year, I am remembering a poem I wrote before you died. I couldn't write about your dying, couldn't know you were dying. So instead, I wrote about Mother Teresa and dandelions, wondered what it was like for her to leave her mother, her home, like a dandelion wisp, become a mother to many, never returning. And someone in class asked about the dandelion, if it was significant and how, and I admitted I'd only found slivers of connection. So my teacher said the poem seemed a bit sentimental without that grounding. I didn't write. I was wondering how it felt to leave a mother still alive, to live your own life, the way I know now you were supposed to at that tender age. Cleave away, visit rarely, too busy, too costly. In the beginning, you call every day, but sometimes she presses you to live the way she wants for you to be safe. But safe feels like a cage, and silence elongates slowly, like a plant moved into the shadows, searching for light until one day she is no longer there to call. I was wondering how you can leave a mother and never look back. This year, I accepted an invitation to do a reading. even though I hesitated, because I recognized the date and then thought, I cannot imagine ever not recognizing the date. Exactly a month before my birthday, when I remember how you once said, you didn't understand birthdays in America. Why celebrate the child and not the mother when the child did nothing except emerge? But even though I hesitated, I accepted. And when I told my friend, I said, I can't sit around being ritualistically sad this day for the rest of my life. All 23 years if I make it to your age, or 60 years to Nene's, or maybe just 2. But what I meant was, I am tired of grieving and writing about grief and reading about grief. Grief, its hollow echo in my chest, grief, my unruly shadow, grief, the mother I knew, grief, the mother I cannot know, grief, the bone-weary grief. This is not what you would have wanted, I thought. But it's been so long, what do I know? Only still you are the shadow and the light over everything.
Well, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
That was damn.
That feels like a journal entry that I fully understand.
Yeah. I love that you brought that to our show because I mean you had to have done that, but because you alluded to it, these poems that you were writing in college that you hid behind, and the dandelions and the herons, and yeah, you captured that so beautifully in that. What's the title again? On the Anniversary of a Death. Is that found anywhere?
Yeah, it was published in Subnivian, which is a journal out of SUNY.
Okay,
It was part of a packet that won their poetry prize last year. So
very cool.
it's
Wow.
somewhere on the internet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, phenomenal. I'm so glad we could finally make this work.
Me too. This was such a joy.
This has been My Bad Poetry.
Now go write some of your own bad poetry.
Nice.
Whoop.
There we go. That's it. That's our show. I'm going to stop the recording before I have more to. Rhyme free doesn't matter.